Meanwhile, the chief executive of McDonald's has been sacked from his £12 million a year job for having a relationship with an employee. The fast food chain said Steve Easterbrook, who's from the UK but worked in the US, had shown poor judgment and had violated company policy. McDonald's has a rule which prohibits managers from becoming romantically involved with a subordinate. Mr. Easterbrook, who's 52 and divorced, has admitted his mistake in an email to staff. He first worked for McDonald's in 1993 as a manager in London before working his way up the company and landing the top job 4 years ago. So he did very well in about 20 years. Maybe you met your own partner at work and you think it is ludicrous that somebody would lose their job over a workplace romance. Or perhaps you say, no, if there's a difference in the level of power, you cannot let this happen. 08000 288 291, email vine@bbc.co.uk. I'm joined now by James Reed, chairman of the famous recruitment agency Reed, and also on the line by business consultant Tina Knight. So let me just start with you, Tina, whether you think this is, in this case of the McDonald's guy, is he not allowed to have a romance?
Well, I think he's allowed to have a romance. I, being the cynic I am, think there's going to be a lot more come out of this because somebody who's turned a company round, who's doubled the share prices, you don't get rid of them over something like this. There are steps beforehand that you take them to one side, you discuss the situation to sack him for this. I think there's another story behind it. I mean, most of the companies that I've worked for, and even my own company's contract, always puts this caveat in. It's the normal CYA clause that people put in just in case there is an abuse of power.
Sorry, CYA?
Cover your proverbial.
So that's CYP, isn't it? Oh, I see. Okay. All right, James Reed, do you have a CYA clause?
Not in that way. No, we don't. And I would say that a lot of people do meet each other at work. It's a common place to meet. And a lot of people fall in love at work. And we've got lots and lots of people in our company who've fallen in love at work and lots of Reed babies out there. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the problem here is probably twofold. You mentioned the power word. I think for a boss, this is a no-no. And I think the other problem here is it was in his contract that he shouldn't do this. So it was in breach of contract, and I suppose whatever the reasons lying behind it, he laid himself open to being fired as he has been.
And I guess if you've got your chairman of the recruitment agency, Reed, and therefore, in a sense, you are right at the top of the apex there. He was in the same position. So there's no one in the company, in his case, that doesn't in some way work for him. So he can't really get away with a romance with anyone.
That's exactly right. That's why I say it's a no-no. I think if you're the boss, the rules are different, and he shouldn't have done this if he wanted to keep his job. And in our company we do have a policy, but it's all about conflicts of interest, and you should let your senior manager know if you're in a relationship where there might be a conflict of interest, so that we can manage it accordingly.
Even if there are two people on the same level, they should let their senior manager know.
Possibly, because they're not always necessarily going to remain on the same level. Mm-hmm. And we have lots of people in different forms of relationship. We've got mothers, daughters, people who are married, people who are siblings, and it's good that we're all aware of where we stand.
Tina, what do you think?
Well, I think that's right. I think that where he's been stupid is not discussing it with the directors on his board. These people working 8 hours a day with people, as the gentleman has just said, office romances are normal. You put clauses in because there are women that will deliberately make a play for bosses in the hope of being fast-tracked up the ladder. We all know that. The big problem is when you've got two people in office, particularly a smaller company, when the relationship ends and it's not a good one, it's an acrimonious relationship, it's very uncomfortable for fellow colleagues. The pouting and stomping that goes on and the tears in the loo scenarios are quite difficult to deal with. So they can be difficult. But I think if somebody in his position has got into that sort of scenario, he should have discussed this. It should have been bounced in the and I'm amazed that he possibly hasn't been. As I say, yeah. I just feel there's something more
else.
To
okay,
this.
Tina, let's just move away from the boss having an affair. What about if you're the boss and you're looking at two people who work below you getting involved? Are you within your rights to say, we don't have love in this office?
Well, I mean, within my rights technically, because I've got a contract that covers that clause, and so technically one of them would have to leave or be put in a different department if you're in a larger company. But most people are very tolerant of this. I think it's going to happen. It happens all the time. I mean, it's one of the I think it's very high on the list of how do you met your partner sort of quizzes.
So you don't mind it as a business leader? You don't mind people having office romances?
I don't like it because I know there's going to be a fallout more often than not. It's great when there isn't, but more often than not, these relations, particularly after the Christmas office party period, there's normally a few romances start up then. And as I say, they can end up very acrimoniously, and it does disturb the working relationship. It's not something I condone, but I certainly wouldn't be terribly draconian about it. But I'd prefer it if people came to me and said, look, I know this is in my contract, this has happened, and then you can deal with it, maybe move them around or make sure they're not in the same area, just little things, so that you can't be accusations of nepotism should you wish to actually promote one of the parts.
Because because James, you can't ever have a situation where you're deciding on a pay rise for a person who you are having an affair with, basically.
Yeah, definitely not, or a disciplinary or any other financial benefit. I think that would be wrong, because it would lead to all sorts of accusations of favouritism and unfairness, and that undermines the whole business, and it undermines the culture of the business. It's poor leadership. I mean, it's a huge loss of authority. So I think if you're the boss, you can't do this.
And going back to Tina's point, what about take the boss out of it? You've got two people get involved in an office. Should the boss be aware and separate them?
Well, I'm aware of lots of situations in our company where people are in relationships and they tend to be separated. I mean, I don't think you can fight nature. I mean, what's the point? I mean, if people are falling in love and want to be together, I mean, for the company to get involved, on a sort of policy level, I think it's probably wrong. But, it is important that it's declared and that it's in the open to the people who need to know about it.
Thank you very much, James Reed, chairman of the recruitment agency Reed, and Tina Knight, business consultant, talking about the head of McDonald's, who it seems to have got himself into a bit of bother. Love your thoughts on Mr. Easterbrook, who has had a relationship in his company. He was running it and he's going.